We are going to be studying Srimad Bhagawatam, Canto 3, the staff flow, Chapter 5, and that is Vidura's talks with Maitreya. And so much is being discussed. Now we're in the section, we're on text 41, and as Maharaj said in the last class, we're on the section about Pada Sevana, that Maitreya Muni was really into Pada Sevana. So now we're going a little further, and he's expanding on Pada Sevanam. If it's possible to expand on it. Srimad Bhagavatam, verse 40. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Marganti Yat Te Mukha Paramidaish. Marganti Yat Te Mukha Padmanidaish. Chanda Suparner Rishayo Vivikte. Kanda Suparnar Rishayo Vivikte. Maharaj, am I saying Rishayo right? Rishayo right? Yeah, is that correct? Just double checking. Okay. Yasyaga Marshoda Sarid Varaya. Yasyaga Marsoda Sarid Varaya. Padam Tirta Pada Prapanaha Pada Tirta Pada Prapana. Marganti Yate Mukha Padmanidaish. Chanda Suparnar Rishayo Vivikte. Yes, Yaga Marshoda Sarid Varaya. Padam Tirta Pada Prapanaha. Marganti Yate Mukha Padmanidaish. Chanda Suparnar Rishayo Vivikte. Yasyaga Marshoda Sarid Varaya. Pada Tirta Pada Prapanaha. Others, please. Marganti Yate Mukha Padmanidaish. Chanda Suparnar Rishayo Vivikte. Yasyaga Marshoda Sarid Varaya. Padam Tirta Pada Prapanaha. Marganti Yate Mukha Padmanidaish. Chanda Suparnar Rishayo Vivikte. Yasyaga Samasoda Sarid Varayaha. Padam Padam Tirtha Pada Prapanaha. Marganti Yate Mukha Padmani Daish. Chanda Suparnar Rishayo Vivikte. Yasyaga Marsoda Sarid Varayaha. Padam Padam Tirtha Pada Prapanaha. Margantiyate Mukha Padmani Daish. Chanda Suparnar Rishayo Vivikte. Yasyaga Marshoda Sarid Varaya. Padam Padam Tirtha Pada Prapanaha. Anyone else want to crack at it? Synonyms: Marganti, searching after. Yat, as. Te, your. Mukha, Padma, lotus-like face. Nidai, by those who have taken shelter of such a lotus flower. Chanda, Vedic hymns. Suparnai, by the wings. Rishaya, the sages. Vivikte, with a clear mind. Yasya, whose. Aghamarshauda, that which offers freedom from all reactions to sin. Sarit, rivers. Varayaha, in the best. Padam Padam, in every step. Tirthapada, one whose lotus feet are as good as a place of pilgrimage. Prapanaha, taking shelter. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. The lotus feet of the Lord are by themselves the shelter of all places of pilgrimage. The great clear-minded sages carried by the wings of the Vedas always search after the nest of your lotus-like face. Some of them surrender to your lotus feet at every step by taking shelter of the best rivers, the Ganges, which can deliver one from all sinful reaction. Repeat after me. The lotus feet of the Lord, are by themselves the shelter of all places of pilgrimage. The great clear-minded sages, carried by the wings of the Vedas, always search after the nest of your lotus-like face. Some of them surrender to your lotus feet at every step by taking shelter of the best river, the Ganges, which can deliver one from all sinful reactions. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Purport. The Paramahansas are compared to royal swans who make their nests on the petals of lotus flowers. So beautiful, the Paramahansas. Great swan-like beings. The Lord's transcendental body parts are always compared to the lotus flower because in the material world, the lotus flower is the last word in beauty. And when you think about it, the lotus, Lord Brahma is born of the lotus of the navel of Vishnu. The lotus is actually not of this world. It's transcendental beauty. The most beautiful thing in this world, is the Vedas or the Bhagavad Gita, because therein knowledge is imparted by the personality of Godhead himself. Most beautiful thing. The Paramahansa makes his nest in the lotus-like face of the Lord and always seeks shelter at his lotus feet, which are reached by the wings of Vedic wisdom. Coming from the lotus mouth, the lotus lips of the Lord is Bhagavad Gita, the song of God. Can you imagine how beautiful is that which is coming from the lips of the Lord? Since the Lord is the original source of all emanations, intelligent persons enlightened by Vedic knowledge seek the shelter of the Lord, just as the birds who leave the nest search out the nest again to take complete rest. All Vedic knowledge is meant for understanding the Supreme Lord, as stated by the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita 15:15. Vaidascha savar aham eva vedya. Intelligent persons who are like swans take shelter of the Lord by all means and do not hover on the mental plane by fruitlessly speculating on different philosophies. We're just hearing about different philosophies this morning in Harinam Chintamani and how Buddhism, so influenced. It was very much a Mayavadi philosophy. So we take shelter of Krishna. The Lord is so kind that he has spread the river Ganges throughout the universe. It's throughout the universe, just as the Himalayas are a garland around the universe. Very, very special. So he spread the river Ganges throughout the universe so that by taking bath in that holy river, everyone can get released from the reaction of sins which occur at every step. We don't even know how many bugs we're killing, how many little tiny microbes we're breathing into our body and killing them at every second. This is a dangerous place, very dangerous. So we are in continual need for purification. There are many rivers in the world which are able to evoke one's sense of God consciousness simply by one's bathing in them, and the river Ganges is chief amongst them. In India, there are 5 sacred rivers, the Ganges, the Yamuna, Godavari, Narmada, Kaveri, but the Ganges is the most sacred. The river Ganges and the Bhagavad Gita are chief sources of transcendental happiness for mankind, and intelligent persons must take shelter of them to go back home, back to Godhead. And we all know that the Ganges is coming directly from the lotus feet of the Lord, the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in this picture here, we find the opportunity for the lotus feet to release the Ganges from the covering of the material universe. This Ganges was not coming into our world at all. But when Vamanadev took his 3rd step and reached it all the way to the covering of the universe and pierced it with his toe of his left foot, then he said to Bali Maharaj, "What will I do? You can't fulfill my promise. I've already taken everything." So, but the Ganges came down, some few droplets of the Ganges came down. And it was amazing that from the lotus feet of the Lord is coming the Ganges. And that was his mercy. So what happened? We all know what happened after that. Bali Maharaj did Padasevani. He said, "You can put your foot on my head." So Padasevana of Bali Maharaj surrendering to the lotus foot of Krishna on his head and the Ganges coming at the same time, there's a very strong connection. Padasevana, this worshiping the lotus feet of the Lord, and because the Ganges are coming from the lotus feet of the Lord, there's special mercy. And it is one of the reasons we say that prayer when we're doing worship. We say the prayer to acknowledge all the holy rivers and assemble them in the service of Krishna. Gange cha Yamuna chaiva Godavari Saraswati Narmada Sindhu Kaveri Jalismin Sanidim Kuru. We say this prayer to invoke and acknowledge that all bodies of water are connected and all of these holy rivers are there for us to access. We need only be conscious. Just like Krishna, he's in the heart of every living entity. Each and every one of us has Paramatma. And we can turn to him and develop the relationship. In the same way, even with water, we can acknowledge that the holy Ganges, the Padasevana, is in the water. We can do Padasevana by being very, very conscious and understanding that Krishna has provided the Ganges all over the world so that we can remember his lotus feet. And even Sripad Sankaracharya recommends that a little knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita and the drinking of a little quantity of Ganges water can save one from the punishment of Yamaraj. This is so important. What is the greatest fear? The greatest fear is to be killed, to die. And if one just takes a little bit of the Ganges water, a little bit of Jamuna water, here's some Bhagavad Gita, then they will not have to have that interview with the Lord of Death. In his famous work, Bhaja Govinda, appears the following shloka: Bhagavad Gita kinchit adita Ganga Jala Lava Kanika Pita Sakrid Dabhyaina Murari Sam Marcha Kriyate Tasya Yamina Sasar Cha. If a person reads a little Bhagavad Gita, takes a little drop of Ganges water, and performs worship to Murari, Sri Krishna, at least once in his lifetime, then he does not have to face an interview with Yamaraj. So devotees knowing this, they're always anxious to share Krishna consciousness with everyone, because they know the greatest fear, just by taking a little prasad, they won't glide down into the animal species. They'll get a chance, if they didn't make it in this life, to go back to Krishna. Just by getting a book in book distribution, when a book comes into a person's hand, maybe they take it home, it goes onto their shelf. Guess what? Maybe they even read it. They are now exonerated from a scary, scary, scary situation. The devotees are always anxious to help the living entity in every way. They're merciful, very merciful. So how did the Ganga come to bless the cosmos? And this is the whole cosmos, because not just Earth, the whole cosmos. So in the 2 steps, Vamana covered all the 3 planetary systems in peace. He pierced the covering of the universe with the toes of his left foot. A few drops of the water from the causal ocean leaked through the hole and fell on the head of Lord Shiva. This was actually, what was happening at the time was that when the Ganges fell, it was carving a hole in the earth. And so there was an alarm sent out, and Lord Shiva came and said, yes, from the feet of Vishnu, I will take on my head. Just as Bali Maharaj said, I will take on my head the foot of the Lord. Lord Shiva then took the Ganges and he broke the fall of the Ganges, which was practically tearing the earth asunder. If you go to Gangotri, you'll see this granite waterfall. It's extremely beautiful. It's the color of skin, glistening skin. And it's granite, which, they make countertops out of it. It's hard, hard rock. And guess what? The Ganges has carved it beautifully. It's just the most lovely, lovely formation. This waterfall is a gorgeous formation there at Gangotri. So Lord Shiva broke the fall of the Ganges, and he you see the pictures of Shiva, he has the Ganges coming out of his head. So from Vishnu's feet, and Lord Brahma also got involved. He tried to break the fall a little with his palm, but then it went on to Lord Shiva's head. So this fell on the head of Lord Shiva, and for thousands of millenniums, these drops of water are sacred Ganges. It first flows into the heavenly planets, which is located at the soles of Vishnu's feet. The Ganges is known by many names, such as Bhagirath and Jahnavi. Bhagirath was also a great personality whose family members we'll read a little bit about soon. It purifies Dhruvaloka and the planets of the 7 sages, the Saptarishis, because both Dhruva and the sages have no desire than to serve the Lord's lotus feet. He is one of John says, is Bali Maharaj. One who drinks the water of the Ganges attains salvation, so what to speak of one who drinks the nectar of Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad Gita is the essential nectar of the Mahabharata. It is spoken by Lord Krishna himself, the original Vishnu, in the Gita Mahatmya 5. Bhagavad Gita comes from the mouth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the Ganges is said to emanate from the lotus feet of the Lord. Of course, there is no difference between the mouth and the feet of the Supreme Lord, but an impartial study, we can appreciate that Bhagavad Gita is even more important than the water of the Ganges. Padasevana is one of the 9 processes of devotional service. So we, in Vrindavan, we're continuously there in the Samadhi of Srila Prabhupada. There's Prabhupada's lotus feet are there, and we got the opportunity here in Hawaii to wash Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet. So Padasevana is a very important part of devotional service, and daily we offer our obeisances to Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet here, right here at his Vyasasan. And Bali Maharaj, he really showed us how it was done. Put your lotus feet on my head. And I know that there are some devotees that got to massage Srila Prabhupada and got his feet on, Srila Prabhupada's feet on their heads. They're so very, very fortunate. The lotus feet of the Lord, as we hear, when we sing every day in Guru Vandanam, the lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. So this lotus feet, it's so much a part of our philosophy. There's no way around it. Lotus feet are so very, very special. So we wonder about, one question that came into my mind was, who got the mercy of Gangama? And there was a story that was told, we have heard it many times about, and this was also when we went to Gangotri, we got to hear this tale, because there were 60,000 sons that disturbed the meditation of Kapila, and they were burned to ashes. And livid by being disturbed, he seared them, and he reduced them to ashes, and he dispatched them to the netherworld. And only the water of the Ganges, then in heaven, could bring the dead sons their salvation. So all the descendants of this family of Kings Sagara, they began doing austerities and penance, but no one could actually get the Ganges to appear. So one such descendant named King Bhagirath, he did rigorous penance, and eventually he was granted the prize of the Ganges descent to heaven. And when you go there to Gangotri, there's a temple there, and the actual river there is called the Bhagirath, because Bhagirath was praying and inviting the Ganges down. And when it meets the Alanath at Devaprayag, it gets renamed the Ganges at that point. But there in Gangotri and at Gomukh, it's called the Bhagirath. However, since her turbulent force would also shatter the earth, Bhagirath persuaded Lord Shiva in his abode on Mount Kailash to receive the Ganges in the coils of his tangled hair and break her fall. If you go there and you see how powerful she is, She's also milky white, and she has these glimmering bits in her. She looks like shining milk. And just as the Jamuna is black, when you see the rivers coming together and you see the different colors at Devaprayag, you see one coming looking one way and one coming, you see them combining. It's quite fascinating to actually go. And all of these pastimes come alive when you actually go to the location. So the Ganges descended and was tamed in Lord Shiva's locks and arrives in the Himalayas. She is then led by waiting Bhagirath down the plains of Hardwar, across the plains, first to the confluence with the Jamuna at Prayag, and then to Varanasi, and eventually to Ganges Sagar, the Ganges Delta, where she meets the ocean and sinks to the netherworld and saves the sons of Sagara. In honor of Bhagirath's pivotal role in the Avatarana, the source system of the Ganges in the Himalayas is named the Bhagirath. So actually there is a place where you can benefit your relatives. And Prabhupada said just by engaging in devotional service, 21 generations are benefited. They're benefited by engaging in pure devotional service. So all of these things are taken care of, but there you can actually sit right at the temple at Gangotri and do a little sacrifice to benefit all of your relatives. I did it with Manjri's Mataji, actually. It was really sweet. One of the trips we went up with Manjri's family, and she and I did it there. Krishna had told the Pandavas how Bhishma had formerly been Devavrata, the leader of the Vasus. But Vashishta's curse, whom the Vasus had offended, by Vashishta's curse, whom the Vasus had offended, they had been obliged to take birth on earth. Although the Rishi had granted that they could soon return to heaven, he ordered Devavrata remain on earth for some time, as he was the Vasu's leader. Now this is another pastime in Ganga Ma. The Vasus are the 8 attendants of the deities of Indra, the king of the Devas. They're very, very important demigods. But they did make a mistake at some point. As we all hear the epic pastimes of the Supreme Lord, Indra even made a mistake. But there is a story in the Adi Parva of the Mahabharata. One day the Vasus were roaming on the earth along with their wives. They visited many places and finally arrived at a forest in which the ashram of Vasistha Rishi was located. One of the Vasus was Prabhasha. His wife happened to see sage Vashishta's cow grazing. She was struck with the beauty of the cow and asked her husband to get it. And this is very interesting to note. I'll put a pin in this, as Maharaj calls it. You put a pin in this, we want to go back to that. Prabhasha was not ready to steal the cow of the sage, but when his wife kept pushing the matter, he relented. He, along with his brothers, stole the cow. On discovering the theft, the enraged sage cursed the 8 immortal Vasus to be born as mortals. So this is, sometimes we make offense to very, very powerful, very important sages, and what is the result of it? There's a punishment. There's a punishment. So while strolling on the bank, and this is a story in how this is the rebirth situation. This is how they were born. Jai Shri Shri Panchatattva Ki Jai. And how they took their birth. Once while strolling on the banks of the river Ganga, Shantanu saw a maiden of exceeding beauty. So enthralled was he by her charm that he asked her to be his wife. She agreed, but put forth the condition that at no stage shall the king question her actions, or she would leave him. He agreed to her condition, and their marriage was solemnized. In due course, she bore him a child, but at its birth, she flung the baby into the river Ganga and returned smiling to the king. Pained and bewildered as he was by her action, he did not question her for fear of her leaving his side. This act of drowning their babies continued for 6 more children. Can you imagine? And he couldn't say anything because he was so attached to his wife, she would leave. When at the birth of their 8th child, his wife left to throw the baby in the river, Shantanu, who had so far bore his children's faith with fortitude to honor his promise, could no longer suppress his anguish and finally burst out and questioned her as to why she would perform such an act upon the birth of a child. Thus he broke his promise. The maiden revealed her identity, and she was Ganga, the goddess of the river. As the king had gone back on his word, she would have to leave him. She told him that she would not kill this 8th child, but would take him with her and present him to the king in due course. Shantanu was saddened by her departure and waited many years for the return of his son. As promised, the goddess returned his son, now grown into a young lad. His name was Devavrata, and he would become famous by the name of Bhishma, a central character in Mahabharata. He was grandfather Bhishma, Devavrata, and he was Prabhasha, the very person who led the stealing of the cow. And his brothers were all cursed, but because he was a leader and it was his wife that egged them on into doing this matter, he was going to have to live out a long life in punishment, where the others, it was over very, very quickly. Mother Ganges very quickly ended their life so they could go back and immediately take up their role as the Vasus, the attendants of Indra. The 8 Vasus were born of the sons of Ganga and King Shantanu. 7 got relief from the curse when they were drowned by Ganga in the river, but Prabhash was not so lucky for his son. For his sin, he had to live a long life on earth as Devavrata, aka grandfather Bhishma, and this is where the pin is in it. Interesting that he had difficulty. His wife caused all of this. So what does he do in this life? Okay, there was extenuating circumstances, but he made a promise that he would not have any connection with women. You wonder why? Okay, there's a backstory to that too, but you think about it, he might have learned a couple of things or two. It might not have been as hard for him to not get married this life, although it was called the terrible curse, because it is very difficult to give up of the opposite sex. So in the end, grandfather Bhishma had a glorious life, and he didn't even leave. He could leave at will when he wanted to, but he wouldn't leave this planet until he got the darshan of Krishna. So even though it seemed like, when you think about it, each and every situation when there's a curse, like with Vidura, he had a curse, but what was his curse really? He had gone from a demigod, being the Lord of Death, to being Vidura, having personal association with Krishna. And now we've got one of the Vasus who's attending. Who's he attending? He's attending Indra. He gets to take birth, be Devavrata, and get the association of Krishna again. So these curses and blessings, when it's involving these amazing beings, they're the same. They're not just being cursed in an ordinary way. They are really getting super intense blessings too, because now they're upgrading to personal association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I mean, wouldn't we do a lot to get that? I would. I'd go through a couple of months, 1 or 2 pretty arduous things to get the personal association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In fact, to be cursed by a saintly person is always a blessing. It's 100% blessing, because why? They always have our best interests in mind. It's never coming from an ego place, a burning ego place, burn in hell or any such thing. No, They bless you to be a devotee. They bless you to become Krishnas. They bless you to get the association of the devotees and Krishna. That's the kind of curse devotees give. Blessed curse. Are there any questions or comments?
Wasn't that similar to the story where the gatekeepers were cursed? They could either have so many lives as a devotee or so many lives as a demon.
Yes.
They took the demon because there was only like 3 lives, I think it was something.
Yes, yes.
That was a good story too.
Absolutely. These curses and blessings, generally speaking, when it's amongst the great personalities, there's a Krishna factor in there. Krishna's in there saying, this is my will. But I'll give you some little choices on the way, how that plays out. And for the devotee, whatever increases their devotional service and their love of Krishna and their direct personal association with Krishna, that's the choice. That's the choice. And the gatekeepers wanted to get back to doing their service sooner. Little did they know they would set out to try to be immortal. Any other? Yes, Adi.
Since you were mentioning about Bhishma, he's such a great personality, and we see that he actually sided on these Kauravas. It's kind of
Ironic.
yeah, because his reason was because they are maintaining me, so I have to sides. But he himself is a Mahajan, Bhishma, Mahajans. So that's a kind of
There's one beautiful part of where, because Krishna had promised that he would not take sides, not take up any weapon. And grandfather Bhishma knew he couldn't keep that promise. He knew that. He wanted to see that somehow Krishna took up a weapon to defend Arjuna. So grandfather Bhishma knew that there are layers of that. It's stated in the scriptures that because he was being maintained in the household of the Kauravas, and that was his natural, even though he completely understood and appreciated the Pandava situation, it wasn't that that he was really in opposition at all. He wasn't. In fact, the way that the Kshatriya kings managed things was, at the end of the day fighting, they would have friendly dealings, even with their enemy. So these Kshatriya kings were very different, although Duryodhana, he was really the sinister mechanism behind it all. He was this, and Dhritarashtra, who was kind of just a big fool and wanting to empower his sons and his side, not really understanding. But in the end, somehow or other, they were all getting the mercy of the Lord. And the Lord plays out these leelas so that Bhagavad Gita can be spoken. He even deludes Arjuna into doubting, where actually he would never doubt. Grandfather Bhishma would never oppose, but they take up like a choice to be an enemy of or a friend to. In the Leela, you get a choice whether or not you're going to be an enemy or a friend. But in every case, it's about Krishna's Leela. That's the primary situation. So even though Grandfather Bhishma was a great devotee, so great that he was in excruciating pain. Any of us would say, like, euthanize me, I'm like in so much pain. I don't want to feel all these arrows. But what did he do? No, I'll stay in this pain just as long as I get your darshan, Krishna. So he was a great devotee. There's no question that he wasn't a pure devotee of Krishna or a Mahajan. But in this circumstance, in Krishna's Leela, he played the role of opposing the Pandavas. Just to make it even more dramatic, everybody was killed, except everybody was killed. Everyone. There wasn't a man standing. So Does that answer it all? Slightly.
It's like a lesson that Krishna wants to give you, no matter
What our
how
position
far,
is.
if you're on the wrong side, you're on the wrong side.
It's not, I don't see, really, it's like you've got Krishna's energy and you've got Krishna. And this is all happening because of his sweet will. Bhagavad Gita, the battlefield of Kurukshetra, all of these dramas are happening because of his sweet will. Because he wants to save as many people as possible. So Bhagavad Gita has got to be spoken. There has to be an epic war. There has to be all of these things, Mahabharata. So these are the eternal associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, willing to go through being jailed, being killed, going through undue amounts of suffering to let the Leela go on to save more souls. So Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam and Mahabharata and Ramayana, all of these things can go on to save us. That Krishna's Leela is happening even in what looks like the material world, so that the jivas, Krishna gets our attention. But there was no question Bhishma wasn't pure. Like you said, he's already a Mahajan. But he's willing to go through all that.
In the same lines, I think the beginning of this chapter, there's one verse where it's in the translation or in the purport where Prabhupada is saying that this whole Mahabharata, people like to hear all these mundane topics. And then the whole reason is that there's also Bhagavad Gita in that as the main aim of this whole creation of Mahabharata.
Just like even, the churning between the demigods and the demons, that all forces, all hands on deck. There's an important mission. It's going to take everybody. Nobody, like Prahlad Maharaj said, even the demons should be pacified in the prayer that Maharaj has been sharing with us over and over again, that the devotees want for everybody's purification, not just a few people, everybody. Everybody. Like the Vasudev Dutt, who was saying he wanted to have everyone, and Lord Chaitanya, give everybody the chance to go back to Godhead that was incarnated in the material world at that time. And he said, it's just like a mustard seed floating in a bag of mustard seeds in a ditch. So Krishna's merciful, and he's churning all of these epic pastimes to get our attention so that we finally develop a relationship with him. We want drama, we crave it. People watch soap operas, they watch horrible things with terrible special effects. So let it be Krishna's special effects. Let it be the superior energy. Let us be focused on Krishna conscious pastimes.
Coming to a theater near you.
Yeah, right in your heart. Hare Krishna. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Sarira Vijaja